You don't have to kill yourself to be successful. 78% of clinically diagnosed illnesses are stress-related. 91% of all Americans will actually have at least one PTSD-inducing event in their life. But the funny thing is this, 93% of them will recover within 3 months. 96% will recover within 6 months. And eventually, only 1.3% continue to live with PTSD. It's not the events of your life that stress you, it's the way you deal with them that does.
Stress can actually affect our longevity and our well-being in the long run. I think it's so powerful. Stress is our new addiction. One has to wonder why we are so obsessed with being busy instead of being obsessed with feeling amazing.
We're constantly stressed as a society, and that needs to change. How do you flip that to make it not be normalized to be stressed? We shouldn't be stressed. We're not designed to be stressed all the time.
This is a quote from your book. Stress is pervasive in our lives, spreading exponentially as we stress out one another, and yet we rarely even acknowledge it as such. Many of us hide it, and many even wear it as a badge of honor. To say how stressed out one is has become the shorthand way of saying I'm needed, I'm wanted, I'm invited, I'm important. We stay alive while it slowly kills our ability to feel joy.
Yeah.
You wrote this.
Let us unpack that comment, because at the Brave table, and now we have a table actually today, when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is pretty much all of us.
That's the truth, yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, it's the badge of honor thing for me. It's like so normalized in society today. If everyone says, I'm so busy, and like that's the response. How are you? I'm so busy. And that should be like it's celebrated. Like I'm busy, so I'm important. I'm stressed, so I'm important. And it's like, why is that the way that we see things in society? It should be like, I have space, I have time, I'm calm, I'm happy, instead of I'm so busy is such a knee-jerk response normalized for everyone, I find. And the whole badge of honor sense with stress it really has become something that's so ingrained in society. And our whole, thing around the book is like becoming unstressable. It's like, how do you flip that to make it not be normalized to be stressed? Because we shouldn't be stressed. We're not designed to be stressed all the time. Our stress response should go on and come off. And now today it goes on all the time, from little things, traffic jams, WhatsApp notifications, emails, and we just don't even realize. And then that builds up, and then the bigger stresses come, and we're constantly stressed as a society. And that needs to change, I believe, anyway. We hope.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of our modern world is, I think we live in a world of constant hyper-normalization of reality. So what ends up happening is that, you see something for the first time, almost like seeing a horror movie for the first time. And it shocks you, and it feels wrong, and it feels like this is not how it's supposed to be. But then you see it the second time, and you're like, yeah, that's okay. And the third time, you start to sort of like, yeah, that I like it even, or I'm used to it. And that applies to everything, the violence we see on TV, the horror we see on TV, the rudeness we see on social media, and the busyness, the fast pace, the stresses of life. We're not designed for any of that. And we're just constantly pumping cortisol into our blood, and thinking that, wondering why cardiac arrests and cardiovascular diseases are the highest reason, or the top reason for death worldwide. And you have to understand that, interestingly, it's because we've accepted life over years and years that is not ours at all. It's not supposed to be that way.
Well, it was interesting when I was kind of reading through this book, there were so many interesting parallels just around how you both came together in the intersection and crossroads. And I want to unpack that for everyone, because when I was reading it, I'm like, oh my goodness, both of my parents also had cancers when we were young. And I was the oldest of three, and they transitioned early in life. And I also had a brother who had an asthma attack. And so, and of course, he also transitioned before I was 19. And so a lot of this loss, I'm kind of like getting into my 20s with. And then I read your book, and I'm seeing obviously both of your stories have very parallel themes, and we can unpack that in a second. But I think for a lot of people who are, listening to this for the first time, or even, avid listeners of the Brave Table, there is this kind of underlying theme of what causes these cancers and the ability to, have these certain diseases. Can you guys talk a little bit about your distinct journeys, as long as you want, as short as you want, as deep as you want to get into?
Yeah.
That landed you to even come up and write this book together.
Do you want me to go first?
Of course. Okay. Always.
So for me, the reason I, work in stress, write about stress, is because of how much stress affected my family. And so growing up, I had a very stress-free life. I think the universe kind of wanted to show me the polarity of how easy things could be in terms of like not feeling stressed and anxious, and then how different that could also be, and flip it over. So when I turned 19, everything kind of really spiraled downhill with my family. My dad, who was a successful entrepreneur, he really suffered after the 2008 credit crisis financially, and became very stressed from that pressure of, his businesses going under. And he was of that, generation where it's like men provide, you do everything yourself. His whole identity was based around being that, male masculine figure. And so he really suffered in that way at the time. There was a lot of stress going on financially. And at the same time, my eldest sister, Suzanne, got diagnosed with cancer out of the blue. For us, that was obviously like a huge shock. My dad, that was something that, he really, really struggled with, because he had cancer when I was younger, and he lost his twin sister to cancer at the exact same age that my sister was then, with the exact same age children of exactly the same gender. So I remember him walking into the kitchen one night just being like, I cannot believe this is happening again, to like my mum. So he was under so much stress. We devastatingly lost Suzanne. And at the same time, I felt like stress was coming at my life from all angles. My dad was depressed, was turning to alcohol. He got re-diagnosed with cancer when he was rushed to hospital 3 days after her funeral, from a blood clot. All fine, but they found out he had cancer again. And I was just waking up every day so anxious. I was so scared to look at my phone in the morning in case I had more bad news from my family, because it was just constant. Had like a legal situation going on with my dad, and people who'd betrayed him in business, just like every angle. We sold our home. I got made redundant. I had a breakup. My sister had just died. My dad was depressed. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I really had to look, okay, how do I actually deal with stress? Because I grew up, like I said, I was very calm. I'm naturally a very calm, happy person. And I was so far away from that person. I was, numbing out on, alcohol, even drugs. I was at that age of where I could go to a party every night with my friends if I wanted to, because we were in our early 20s. Everyone was, running around London, having a good time. They were all doing it for fun. I was doing it for like trying to numb myself as much as I could from distracting from all the stress. And so, I got into then realizing, okay, I needed to change. Something had to. Couldn't do anything about the outside world, so I had to change something with myself. And that's when I started learning about all the different sides of stress. I was like, okay, so how do you learn about this spiritually? How do you learn it energetically, from the mind, mindfulness, to the soul, to the body? Researched it all, realized, oh, wow, this stuff really does work. And then started to make myself calm. And it was when I lost my dad to stress-related illness 4 years after my sister, to a burst stomach ulcer from stress. His cancer did not cause him any problems. He was correct. He refused to treat it, which obviously caused me a lot of stress, but I had to surrender to that. And when he was in the ICU in hospital, because he had cardiac arrest when he was in hospital again, they looked at him and they were like, do you realize, he has cancer? And I was like, I'm aware of that. But they were like, the reason we found out he's in this situation is he's got a huge stomach ulcer. Has he been under any stress? And I was like, me and my mum and my sister were like, yeah. And so we lost him to stress-related illness, and I was already on like a mission to kind of work with people in stress. Then I met Mo, after my dad died, and our missions aligned in different ways, which I'll let you explain, but that's why we kind of now are like, okay, this really matters.
This is a big mission.
It really does matter, actually, because so I was not aware of that, because most of my work on happiness and all of my podcast and so on, I did with the 1 billion happy mission in mind. And my 1 billion happy mission was triggered by losing my son. But Ali was left us in a medical malpractice, basically, a surgery that went wrong. But I never knew why I was so anti-unhappiness. I was so anti-stress. I was militant. Like when Solve for Happy, my first book, came out, and I would, I would be speaking publicly and, spoke to maybe hundreds of thousands of people in the first couple of years. And I would get the question, but, there is value to unhappiness. It inspires us and it makes us write poetry. And I would be angry. Like literally, I don't act angry on the stage, but within me, I'd be boiling. Like, don't say that. There is zero value. It doesn't bring any value. And in my heart, of course, in my mind, I know that it doesn't, because, all of the negativity doesn't lead to the result. It just leads to you taking action that leads to the result. And you could probably be motivated to take that action from the positive as well. Yeah. The thing is, when Alice told me her story on my podcast, so she came first on Slow Mo and then I was on Unstressable. When she told me her story, I realized that the reason I was so militant was because I, at 24, held my dad in my hand where he died in my arms, right? And he died again because of a heart attack, because of stress, because he was a very prominent engineer in my home country, Egypt. He really, really had a massive impact on the infrastructure of the country. And then, 4 years before the end of his career, the CEO of the company changed and the ownership of the company changed. And so they asked him to handle another department. And for some reason, he had that one thought in his head that was, I was never appreciated. Okay? Which is absolutely not true. He was renowned as a prominent engineer in the country, and he ran that department for like 27 years or something. But he just got that one obsessive thought and sat in his living room, and you could see him deteriorate and decline and decay, really. And as much as I attempted to get him out of it, I failed. And I loved him very, very dearly. I was his youngest child, and he really related to me. And so my older brothers would be out and, enjoying life. And I would literally spend every evening next to him watching him decay. And so when Alice told me the story, I realized that stress took my father. And stress took my father literally defines who the enemy is. It becomes really clear. And so when Alice suggested we write about stress, at the time I was like, no, I champion happiness. This is my topic. And she very calmly, as Alice always is, said, how do you expect people to be happy when, and bam, 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 started to say the stats about stress. I was like, okay, so why don't you go write a few pages and let's see. And Alice and I, we write very, very differently. I'm a very serious. I mean, you'll easily see it in the book. Huh? I'm a very serious engineer, very organized. I use mathematics and logic and physics, and I explain very soft topics in a very logical way. Alice is just flow itself, and so she writes those 6-7 pages, and I'm like, where the hell is she going with this? Like, I have no idea. Like,
as an engineer, you're like, I need the 5 steps.
Exactly. I need bullet points and numbers, right? And then, but the thing is that with Alice's writing, almost always around half a page in, you feel something in your heart, and it really captures you. And then suddenly you start to think, and I think we started to very quickly see how we can complement each other, and I think that came out very beautifully in the book. A very yin and yang approach to the topic.
Oh, 1000%. I mean, you definitely you're the head, for sure.
I have a heart. I swear, I have a heart.
You do have a heart, and well, what I love. So there's a few different points that are coming up here that I just wanted to share. I think, obviously, both of your stories are just. There is a theme, and I think for anybody watching this either on YouTube or listening to this, there's a theme of our personal stories kind of having this effect of, wow, I can't control my loved one's situation, and this stress is then going to be passed down to us, and we can do something about it. We can ruminate in the suckiness of the situation, or we can actually take action and do something about it.
Exactly.
And you
Own
all
it,
have
yeah.
now made this, a mission, and it's so powerful. And I couldn't put the book down. It was because it's, of course, it has your head and the logic, and I can see.
Did
I
you
can see
skip
that.
through my bits?
No, no, and I wanted to actually, I want to actually bring up I think this quote is from you because it has stats in
I
it.
hope it's for me. I hope it's for me. I have a reputation as a best-selling author here.
But the ebb and flow of the way both of you have really nailed the point. You're obviously the head, you're the heart. I can definitely see, because you're basing it off of also facts.
Yeah.
With the heart. So I think it's going to encompass so many more people.
I hope so, yeah.
That is going to land for people who are a little bit more feminine, flowy, airy, it's going to land for them. And then for people who need that structure, like my husband.
Yes, exactly. I'm writing for your husband, yes.
And I think the facts to back how stress can actually affect us for our longevity and our well-being in the long run. I think it's so powerful. And I think this is from you, but you introduced a couple of very striking facts here and statistics. According to the American Institute of Stress, 1 in every 3 Americans lives in extreme stress.
Absolutely.
77% suffer physical health issues due to the stress that they feel, and stress negatively impacts the mental health of 73% of all Americans. 1 in every 2 Americans has trouble sleeping. And
I believe that.
It's insane. And those kinds of stats are not just US. We're using this as a basis.
Yeah.
So speak to us about how is this becoming this, this normalization of the stress phenomenon?
It comes both sides. Huh? It comes from one side, like Alice mentioned at the beginning, that we've hyper-normalized it. We've accepted it. We've worn it as a badge of honor. But at the same time, we've created a life that is so hyper-stressful. Like the famous saying, we spend a lifetime chasing things we don't need to
Is it
impress
cool
people.
to be stressed?
Is it cool to be stressed? I mean, of course, it's also cool to smoke. It's also cool to smoke, to drive a very fast car in a reckless way. Yeah, and it is really, it's choices that we make, but what's the price that you end up paying for them? And the thing about stress is when you don't notice it. You see, stress is superpower. The Hulk, the fictional character, is a great example of what happens when you alter the configuration of your body. You can get cortisol in your blood, you're superhuman. There are stories of, mothers that would lift a car to save her child. And super strength, super focus, super, acute vision, everything's fantastic. Best use of your muscles. But to be able to do that, what happens is you reconfigure your body in a way that, like Alice wrote, if you remember, the original reasons for cortisol was that a tiger showed up to eat you, right? And when you're about to become steak, you don't send blood to your digestive system to digest your steak.
Right.
It's as simple as that, right? And so if you do that for 30 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, if it's intended to be that long. It's never intended to be that long in nature. And then you go back to parasympathetic state, and then you rest and digest, as they say. You're doing the full function of survival. One part of survival is fight or flight or freeze, right? But the other part of survival is parasympathetic state. Core functions of your body are operating. So your liver is doing what it's supposed to, your kidneys are doing, and your digestive system, and so on, right? When that happens, then stress is fantastic, right? You get stressed about a presentation you want to do tomorrow, you get that a little bit of extra cortisol in your blood, you focus, you get through the presentation, you do amazing, right? If you're stressed about a presentation every day of your life, you spend weeks on months on end without your liver functioning at all, without your kidneys doing what they're supposed to do, with inflammation all through your body, that eventually accumulates, and you end up with a heart attack, and you end up with what was the statistic? 78% of clinically diagnosed illnesses are stress related. So yes, when you go and you say I have diabetes, yes, you have diabetes, but the source, one of the triggers of your diabetes is stress related, right? And so think about the impact. No, I normally don't want to use statistics like the impact on the economy and the economic cost to all of the healthcare and so on. I honestly don't, this is not what I write for, okay? I write for the individual and think about the impact of a beautiful life that is shortened, filled with pain, and because of the stress, not lived in a way that actually gets you to enjoy life and be with loved ones and so on. I mean, one of the things we wrote in the book, we have a few sort of memorable slogans, is living stressed is not living. It really is not living. I mean, look at your life when you're stressed and ask yourself, if this is what you were offered, even for success in the future, and you consciously looked at it, would you pick that life? Or would you pick a life that is a little less stressful and a little more joyful? Okay, shouldn't that be your choice?
I mean, it's huge because you write, stress is our new addiction. One has to wonder why we are so obsessed with being busy instead of being obsessed with feeling amazing.
Yes, doesn't that make sense? You should feel obsessed by feeling amazing, but the society guilts you. Okay, remember, we're not advocating that everyone stops working and go surfing in Australia. Right?
That would be nice.
That would be very unstressable, right? But it's not that's not what we're advocating. What we're advocating is that it's not the events of your life that stress you; it's the way you deal with them that does. Okay, and that yes, you can choose to be like us. I mean, publishing this book, from publishing books, it's a grueling process for a couple of months. Forget
very
writing.
Stressful.
Yeah, very stressful, right? But how do you go through that process with joy, with fun? Like we were recording the audiobook last week, and so many laughs and so much memories, and we have so many reels on our social media that they are fun. You don't have to kill yourself to be successful.
Well, and I love that you both put, a lot of different tools and very much, I mean, I love the acronym for everything.
Books need to sell in America, you see?
Of course, I know, exactly. Well, and I think it's easy for us to then remember.
Yeah, that's
because
correct.
the one thing that I was reading the other day, I was on the plane and I'm like, oh, we need to go to the gym.
Yes, exactly.
So can you explain to us what going to the gym actually means?
So to understand the value of this, you have to understand that when, first we discuss what stress is and how stress works and so on. But when we're stressed in our 4 different modalities as humans. So as humans, you're made up of your mind, your emotions, your physical form, and your spirit.
The MEPS is what you call it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And the MEPS is basically stressed differently, and so they need to be handled differently. And so, of course, I took the mental stress bit because that's really where most of my work is, how to handle your mind and how your mind works. And first, at the beginning, I started for the first, let's say, 2/3 or a third of the chapter to basically say, here is how you become not mentally stressed. How do you de-stress, right? Yeah. But then our mind comes with a beautiful feature, right? Our brain, let's call it, and that feature is called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is just like going to the gym, where hypertrophy is So basically, you break down the muscles, and then you rest and you feed the muscles, and then they become stronger. Yeah. Right, and you can visibly see it if you go to the gym every day and you lift heavy weights, upper body exercises. You look like a triangle. If you go every day and squat, you'll look like a pear. It's visible, right, and you can see it. Okay, the thing is that within your mind, within your brain, inside your skull, the same happens through the process that's known as neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is basically saying the parts of your brain that you use will become stronger, and the parts of your brain that you don't use will diminish. Okay, you don't visibly see it, but you can easily see it in your behaviors, right? So if you find that you're hyper addicted to watching the news and to completely be convinced that the world is about to end and that everything is wrong and that humanity sucks and so on. It's because you've been training yourself every day to spend a lot of time in front of the news, to look for what's wrong with the world and believe, and develop the neural networks that enable you to be very good at this. So when someone comes to you and says, but there is so much love in the world. Like, think of the number of people that love their kids, love their wives, love their, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. And suddenly you go like, no, let me tell you about that one wife that hit her husband on the head yesterday. It was all over the news. Okay. And you can reverse neuroplasticity. So the idea is what you use works, what you don't diminishes. So let's use the right things in a format that's similar to the gym. Right? We go to the gym and do 8 exercises, the GYMMMMMM. So gym, as we read it, right? And they're very, very, very attainable, very enjoyable to do.
Right.
Okay?
It's brilliant.
And once if you do them long enough, I'd normally say 21 days, you're a different human. Okay? And you're a different human in a way that makes you not de-stressed, but unstressable. Unstressable is the goal. Unstressable is, I don't want you to read the book and end up feeling good for a month. I want you to continue to engage in life, but not be stressed by it. Right? And that requires bigger brain muscles or better brain muscles in the areas where we need them. Gratitude is of course the mother of all exercises, right? Then yielding. Is the why. The M's are, I'm not going to remember all of them. Meditate, be mindful, mind your business, connect to Mother Nature, and I always forget.
Meet Becky.
Meet your brain.
Oh, right.
I love that one.
Well, that is your key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, can you explain the last one? The Meet Becky.
What Meet Becky? I mean, this is what Mo obviously discovered when he wrote Soul for Happy, and it made such. I call mine Edgar, which is to call your brain, call your mind something else so it separates you from you and actually direct it and tell it the kind of thoughts you want.
Yeah, treat it like a third party, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's not you thinking, huh? It's your brain thinking to present ideas to you. And when you see that distinction, you no longer have to obey your brain. You no longer have to listen even. You can tell your brain like, what? Are you telling me that my daughter doesn't love me? Give me proof for that. Don't just tell me things that I need to accept. And meeting Becky is almost the opposite of meditation, even though for very advanced meditators, it is actually what, the most advanced meditation is to be aware of what you're aware of. Right?
Because we're dissociating ourselves
Completely. So we, one of the myths about meditation is that meditation is about silencing your brain. Right? The exercise of meditation, just like when you go to the gym lifting, that resistance is the reason why you grow muscles. Okay? Meditation is the act of mind wandering and then bringing your mind back to calm. It's that resistance, it's that stretch, bringing your mind to calm, that benefits your brain so that you can bring your mind to calm when it goes, astray and becomes anxious, right? The very advanced meditators will go into that meditation of being aware of what they're aware of, being aware of your own thoughts. And Meet Becky is exactly that. It's a 25-minute exercise where I simply sit with my brain, but not try to silence it. As a matter of fact, let it go crazy. Okay? Yeah. I allow myself a paper and a pen, and I basically have 2 rules. Rule number 1 is whatever my brain says is acknowledged and then, moved away from. So, my brain will say, hey, Neeta's going to be here today. We're going to have to be prepared to talk about her on my podcast and me on hers. And, I will write that down. Neeta's going to be here today. What else? Okay? And what else? You'll first observe that your brain suddenly will go like, oh my God, she's listening. Like I have to start, like, seriously, and it starts to slow down. It goes like, I have to say something like smart. And then it literally it moves from all of that wild storm into a stream, into a drip. And then suddenly you ask it, which is the second rule, you ask it what else, and your brain will say, yeah, Neeta's coming today. And you'll say, no. Rule number 2 is nothing is repeated. What else? I want a new idea, a new thought. And yeah,
So this is the training of your brain.
Totally.
So that it
around
excludes
11,
all the noise.
Yeah, around 11, 12. So no, I don't want it to be quiet. I want it to say everything it has to say, okay? Because then around 12 minutes in my case, normally, my brain goes like, that's it. I have nothing else to say, okay? And then you get that calm that you're supposed to get when you're meditating, not because you're bringing your brain to calm, but because it has nothing to say. And that's peace. Not only the peace of, feeling that there is no noise inside your head, but also the fact that you got all of those thoughts on paper, because once the exercise is done, you look at that paper and you go like, oh my God, that's so stupid, and you scratch it out, right? And literally, I scratch it out with a red pen, right?
Wow.
So that it's a visual representation to my brain. Don't say this stupid shit again, right? And if something is important, you sort of add it to your things to do.
Yeah.
And that also calms your brain, because now your brain goes like, oh yeah, Neeta took note. She's going to act upon it. I don't have to repeat it inside her head all the time.
And it's something great because you're also, you're orating it, but you're also writing it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, Brave Table Fam, if you struggle with meditation, this is actually almost a moving meditation, but it seems like you're also clearing out your brain.
Yes, and I would say also, by the way, for everyone who's struggling with meditations, meditation is supposed to be a struggle. Do you understand that? If you go to the gym and everything you carry is light, that's not exercise. Your muscles will not benefit. You're supposed to mind wander. You're supposed to recognize that you're mind wandering, and you're supposed to put in that push to bring your mind back to calm. And then a few seconds later, it will wander again. Hallelujah, happy. Okay? When it's wandering, bring it back to calm. That exercise is what gives your brain the ability to learn how to be calm.
I mean, this is fascinating. And I want to talk about, we already talked about the 4 layers and languages of stress, which is the MEPS that you guys talked about. So, and there's a quote that I want to, and I'm guessing this may be Alice.
You never know.
we don't know. But I do want to bring this up because I now know that our hearts will never be not heavy until we've asked them what's truly weighing them down, what they need from us to be brave enough to address, what they truly want to be heard. It doesn't matter how long we suppress it, numb it, distract from it. That ache will keep returning, keep asking for attention. It will only stop when we have finally allowed it the space.
That was me, yes.
I admit it.
What did you mean by this? Let's unpack that, because I think it's profound.
Oh, thank you. Well, it is so common to me to see this, and I've experienced it in my life. So was that when, I was going through that time post losing my sister and my dad was very depressed, I was, saying, like I said, numbing. I was numbing. I didn't want to actually access the pain of the reality of what was in front of me, of my grief. And I didn't want to access the pain of realizing that I'd lost my dad mentally before he'd gone physically, because he was a completely different person to who I had growing up, this wonderful, charismatic, strong, amazing person. And so I really suffered in how I was feeling, processing this grief that was live and processing the grief that was gone. And I didn't know how to deal with that much emotion at the time because it was overwhelming. So I was numbing it. And I thought, well, it's numbed, it's gone now, right? It's pushed down, I'm never going to see it again. And it was after I had a breakup from out of the blue from someone I thought, I really loved, could have been with. I realized that was actually what set me on to the starting point of doing things like Reiki and stuff then. So everything always happens for a reason. But when that breakup came, every single emotion that I had pushed down from my sister, from my dad, from, all the loss that we'd experienced as a family came out at the same time as the emotions I felt for that breakup. And I was completely shattered. I didn't, I was like, oh my God, I had so much emotion. And that's why, when I say that, it's like we push it down, we suppress these things. Our heart will eventually, it could come out years later. That was, that came out for me 2 years after my sister died. And, it can come out days for people, weeks, months, but equally, 10 years later sometimes. Because we cannot suppress an emotion, as in we can't get rid of a negative emotion. We have to acknowledge it. We have to process it and move it through us. And so I'm a massive believer, you know, in the quote you said was about, we have those moments, I think, as people, I mean, I know I have, where you think, oh, I don't quite feel right in my heart, but you know, you haven't put the clue together as to what your heart was trying to say from maybe a few weeks ago, that you at the time were too busy to acknowledge, and you carried on with whatever you were doing, and maybe something upset you a few weeks ago with a certain person or a certain situation, and because you hadn't acknowledged that emotion at the time, because you hadn't processed it and just understood where it was coming from, then it still will just reappear later, being like, oh, hello, you know, that ache, that slight niggle. And I truly believe that, you know, the heart wants attention, and to give our emotions, a negative emotion, I say, it's only ever trying to alert you to one of two things: something outside of yourself that you need to change and take action on, or something inside of yourself that you need to heal because you've been triggered by something. And so it's looking at like, okay, what is my heart trying to show me? You know, what is it trying? It's not a negative emotion, is trying to get your attention. That's all it wants to be heard. And
it's
we
like,
try
hey.
to push it away. Exactly. Literally, hey. It's literally waving. And we try to not wave back. And I think it's, we have to learn to embrace it so that it moves through us quicker. That's the kind of counterintuitive thing we do. We think if we ignore it, it'll go away. When actually, if we welcome a negative emotion, notice it curiously like a friend, accept it, it will move away quicker because it showed you what it's there for. It's done its job.
Totally. And I think also because of, you know, sometimes our cultural backgrounds, you know, you're just taught to suppress, deny, numb, shove it under a rug, you know.
So I'm British, so yes.
You know, the stoic and this idea that either happy is the only emotion that we can experience, which is why I love the dichotomy, and I love the fact that you both have come together coming from various different, you know, walks, because I think I can resonate with you only wanting to be optimistic, especially when I was going through my whole roller coaster of early loss. But, you know, I think that there's only so much you can do packing all of those emotions in a closet for a decade until it just like completely bursts. And you give really actionable tools, and it's almost like it's like a guidebook, it's a workbook. It's it's like an encyclopedia.
There's a lot in there.
I mean,
Isn't she wonderful?
No, I mean, seriously, it's all in one. And I think for people who can't understand or fathom why they are experiencing the way that they're experiencing, there's actionable tools to get you out. And you do a really good job of explaining, even, you know, the TONN example, TONN.
TONN, yeah.
How we start to get ourselves out of this, because I think, you know, there's a whole chapter in the book really focusing on burnout.
Oh, burnout is it. I mean, so the real thing again is to understand that stress in itself is not a bad thing. A bit of stress is good for you, right? But we don't want you to break. And there are three states in which a human will break under stress. And I know it sounds really weird, but for me to be able to understand that, I had to compare stress in humans to stress in physics, right? And, you know, I use very highly simplified equations to explain that. But the idea is that stress itself is not the challenges applied to you. It's the challenges applied to you divided by the resources and skills and abilities you have to deal with them. Right, and you know, burnouts. So let's take the three ways we break: trauma, burnout, and what I call anticipation of a threat. Okay, or anticipation of a stressful situation. So trauma is a situation where, truly, you know, it's like when you have an object in physics and you apply so much force to it that exceeds its internal resources to carry it, so it fractures. Right? It happens within a very short amount of time, higher than your ability to deal with it. You lose a loved one. You go through a difficult breakup. You get into an accident yourself or whatever. So something like that really, really breaks you. Okay. The interesting side is this. You know, the extreme cases of trauma lead to what is known as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and interestingly, 91% of all Americans will actually have at least one PTSD-inducing event in their life, at least one, okay? Which basically sort of tells you that it is sort of almost on the menu for all of us. But the funny thing is this, 93% of them will recover within 3 months.
Wow.
96% will recover within 6 months. And eventually only 1.3% continue to live with PTSD, which tells you that trauma is not the reason for the stress pandemic. Trauma breaks us, is going to be part of everyone's life, but we mostly all of us recover, and as a matter of fact, most of us will enjoy what is known as post-traumatic growth, right? What then are the pandemic or the epidemic sides of stress? It's burnout and anticipation of stress, which leads to anxiety and panic and so on, right? So burnout is, interestingly, it just shows up in your life on a Monday morning or a Tuesday evening, completely unannounced. It's like you didn't lose a loved one, no big event happened, okay? And the reason is because you've been adding little cubes to your Jenga rickety structure for weeks, months, or years, right? So burnout basically is the sum of, when the sum of all of the little stressors in your life multiplied by the intensity of each, multiplied by the frequency of their occurrence, multiplied by the time for which you allow them to last, okay? You add all of this up, and if your stressors are simply that you have to carry a toothpick from your kitchen to your living room 600,000 times a day, you're going to end up breaking down, right? And that's what happens with burnout. Your boss is a little annoying, your commute is a little too much, your alarm in the morning jolts you out of bed, and you just keep adding them up, and then finally your partner comes and says, babe, I'm not going to be able to go to that dinner, and bam, you break down, right? And so how do you prevent this? When no single one of those stressors is actually killing you, okay? The way to prevent them is to become aware up front. So the model that we use is called the 3 L's, the limit, learn, and listen, right? Limiting is the first thing to do, is to actually have an inventory of all of the things that are going into your life, and to acknowledge to yourself that, Game of Thrones is not only entertaining you, but it's also stressing you.
Right.
Okay? And that's,
It was very good, though.
But there's a lot of jarring things that happen there. Your nervous system is like, what is happening?
and it's important to acknowledge and understand and make a choice. You can still say it's very good and I want to continue to watch it, but maybe I don't want to deal with that friend that is stressing me all the time, or I want to choose a kinder alarm in the morning, or I want to sleep a little longer, or I want, right? And that kind of awareness, we take you through very simple guided exercises so that you can, become aware of what is happening in your life. That's burnout, right? And if you end up in burnout, then honestly, you're not paying attention. It is so your responsibility, because truly and honestly, 80%, maybe more of the stressors in your life are either avoidable, or you can influence them to reduce their intensity, right? So if you cannot avoid your commute, you can take a wonderful cup of coffee and a good music, or podcast with you, and you enjoy the commute, okay? So you can do something about them. The other side is really what I actually put, one of my favorite parts of the book is, the real pandemic as well is anxiety and panic attacks, right? And it I attempted, and Alice, to try and explain it in a simple way, but suddenly it becomes clear when you understand fear and all of its derivatives.
That was huge.
Yeah, to me it's so clear, because you're constantly suffering anxiety and panic attacks, and you're unable to change. Why are you not able to change that? Because you're solving the wrong problem. Okay, so let's understand those. Let's say that the most prominent 4 derivatives are worry, fear, anxiety, and panic. Okay, worry is pre-fear. Okay, worry is, I suspect there might be a reason for me to be afraid. Okay, fear is, I know there is a threat attacking me in the future. Okay, anxiety, interestingly, is not about the reason you're afraid at all. It's not about the threat. It's about, I don't think I have the ability to deal with the threat. It's about you, It's about you judging your own abilities and saying, I know there is a threat coming, but I don't think I can deal with it. Okay? And panic is a question of time. The threat is imminent. Okay? It's basically, I don't have enough time to ensure that I'm safe. Once you see it that way, suddenly you start to react differently. The problem is when we feel any of them, we try to address the threat.
Yeah.
That's the way you should do it when you know that you're afraid. You address the threat so that you feel more safe. When you're worried, you should just spend your brain cycles to verify if there is actually a reason to be afraid or not. If there isn't, drop it. If there is, then go ahead and be afraid, but we're now going to deal with it differently. It's not going to be a question of, is it going to happen, is it not? It's going to be a question of, yes, it's going to be happening, so how do I become more prepared for it, right? Anxiety is all about you. So when you feel anxious, don't think about what's threatening you. Think about your abilities, your capabilities, your learning, your support system. Okay, can you change things so that you become able to deal with it? Work on yourself, not on the threat. Okay, and panic is give yourself more time, right? If you're panicking because you have a presentation on Thursday and you're not prepared for it, either drop a few things from your agenda to allow more time, or call the person and say, can I do it in the evening and not in the morning? And provide yourself more time. I make it look easy.
Yeah.
It's not, but that awareness is what we're trying to arm you with, so that you can then take all of the practical exercises and not find yourself panicking and still trying to deal with your fear.
Well, and it's such a good reframe, because even as you're sharing this, and I've had so many people just share their bouts with panic attacks, and it's more often recently, ever since post-COVID, I've had so many people either writing to us or telling us their stories about having panic attacks. And even for me, having my second child, and even just becoming a mother and the walk in motherhood, when I was reading that chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, you're right. The mom anxiety has gone up through the roof. I was looking at a meme, and it was like, you're an anxious mom if you are worrying about everything that your kids are doing the second that they wake up and the second that they go to sleep. And it's just like, oh my gosh, we've normalized this, that it's like a comedic reel these days.
And that's really sad. Because in reality, yes, of course, the heart of a mother is so beautiful to worry about everything for the kids, to be anxious, because you really cannot control the kids 100%. Otherwise, you'll destroy them, right?
And you have to keep them alive.
And exactly, right? At the same time. And get some sleep, right? Like how can, it just doesn't seem to be a proper game design if you think about it. But the truth is, what is all that anxiety bringing to you or to the kids? Because if you become aware of that, again, you
No, this is huge.
This is it.
This is the awareness of taking the time to break it down and utilize some of the tools. And, we think and we make up such a big deal in our minds about how much time it's going to take to unpack this thought.
Correct. And as a mother, you have your first child. And if your first child sneezes, you go like, oh my God, the world's going to end. When your second child is vomiting and lying on the floor, you go like, I'm coming, baby. Right? You're sort of aware that he's not going to, this is not a big deal. Right? And so you have to analyze those things. Like if there is a real threat, that's when a mom comes in. If you're just worried about everything and every germ and every thought that comes into their minds and all of their future and graduation parties from kindergarten and grade 1 and grade 2, and I go, wow, what are we doing to ourselves, right? The truth is there are things that mattered, and all of us have grown up as kids. Some of us, I grew up in Egypt. Like, I was playing in the mud. My mom would literally take me and put me in the mud just because this is good for my immunity. And it's a little harder for me to get out and chase her. So, it's like, let's get rid of that kid, right? And in reality, if you understand how resilient our kids can be and how, once again, you're limiting reasons for your own anxiety and suffering that reflects so badly on your kids, because you become aware and you do the work, you do the thinking, you understand that some of that is not needed at all.
Yeah. And well, I would love to ask you, Alice, what is this hope that you have for the book, now that we've kind of, merged together both the head and the heart, and there's something for, I feel like, everybody to take away?
I hope the book, our joint mission for it is to help take 1 million people a year out of stress. So that's our bigger mission through both the book and our speaking engagements and our membership that brings all the content of the book into like these actionable tools and sessions for people. My other hope for it in terms of how it lands with people is to actually get them to understand that they are stressed in different ways than they think. So for me, it's always been the reason we wanted to write this book in this way of MEPS is because stress is largely talked about just from the physical and the mental and the logical. And it's like we are a machine and we're biological, and we put that in the book, and it's true. But my greatest wish for it is for people to really understand how much of an effect your emotions and your soul also have on how you're feeling, how stressed you are, how calm you are, and how to actually get into a dialect with them, how to actually start to speak to them so that you don't have to live such a stressed life, as well as your mind, as well as your body. But it's being a whole, and actually understanding that we are truly 4 parts of the self. And if we don't know how to speak to each part of ourselves, then you're going around really at a lower capacity than you can be in this world. And when we connect to, the heart, when we calm the mind, when we actually, pay attention to the body and listen to the soul, then everything comes together as one. And that's what's meant to be, really.
And that's the true part of well-being and beginning your healing journey, which is a fascinating part of the human experience.
Yeah.
So the book is out now. Where can we get it? This has been a fascinating conversation. And before we get into our little igniting round, let's get all of the details.
Yeah, so out on every retailer, every online retailer, but also available in audio and ebook format. The book is part of the mission. As we said, there is also unstressable.com, where we have a membership for a community of stressed people. It's quite interesting when we started, because I have to say at the beginning, we really got the most stressed people that rushed in, and it's now such a lovely community with so much laughter and so much calm. And we have those monthly webinars where we have open conversations and so much open sharing, and it's really lovely. Unstressable.com, by the way, if people pre-order the book, keep your pre-order receipt, because then you can get a $15 discount on unstressable.com. So basically you get the price of the book back.
Perfect.
And at the same time, you can come to our launch webinar. So basically, just to attend and listen to a couple of hours of conversation around Unstressable.
Well, and I feel like the community that you both have built is so needed.
Much more powerful than us, believe it or not. The way they support each other. It's just incredible, really. Because
they don't just take it from you both. It's also collective. It's collective healing. It's collective discussion.
Yeah.
And
accountability. Alice always uses that word, right? You always want an accountability partner when you're on a journey that's unfamiliar, right? You want someone to say, "Hey, I too want to get from A to B. Shall we walk together?" And then remind each other and so on. It's really lovely, and I think it's also joyful for us, because as a writer, you probably know, there is a disconnect between the time you put words on paper and then others read it. Yeah, sometimes people are kind enough to write back to you and say, "This really helped us." But when you meet people and see face to face the changes, it's just really rewarding for us as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Everyone listening and watching, definitely get the book, Unstressable, and you can get it. I would highly recommend to go to unstressable.com so you can take advantage of all of the pre-bonuses and the membership, because why not do this in community where you are fully supported? And congratulations on all of the early success of the book. Where can everyone run to follow you all and get more the behind the scenes of the launch of the book?
Behind the scenes of our many takes of the audio. You can find that on at unstressable.official on Instagram is our Unstressable page. And then I'm at AliceLaw__ on Instagram, and Unstressable Alice on TikTok. And yeah, Unstressable. A lot of things I do is unstressable. So Unstressable with my podcast as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm Mo_Gawdat on Instagram, and yeah, you can find me on all of the other platforms, but I won't answer, honestly.
That's fair.
Yeah, because of limit,
Yes,
right? So
of
there
course.
was a point in my life where I had hundreds of thousands of followers on other platforms, and I said, look, I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
And so I limited that. But also my favorite baby in the world is Slow Mo, which you are a guest on my podcast. And Slow Mo is top 5 of health and well-being in many countries around the world. So it is a beautiful effort to bring the wisdom of others to that topic of stress and happiness.
It's fascinating. I'm going to link everything in the show notes where you can buy the book. And when you get the book, I always suggest, fam, get it for a friend, get it for a family member, get it for somebody who needs it, gift it to somebody. Because if we can all solve the issue of being unstressable, I think we collectively begin to heal and live better lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for being here.
you.
Okay, before we fully end, so you picked 2 different conversation cards, and maybe Alice, we'll start with you. You can answer them in how long or how short it takes you.
Oh, I love this question.
Okay.
What does being brave mean to you?
Ooh.
For me, being brave is about being brave enough to be authentically you. So being authentic to your soul side and not your human ego side, or the labels that society has put upon us that we all think we should be and have to be. And actually being brave enough to listen to what your heart, what your soul truly wants for you in this lifetime, and being able to go out unapologetically in the world to be that person. That's what being brave means to me. I think we need a lot more of that in the world, because so many people today, we talk about in the book spiritually stressed. That's partly what spiritual stress is, going against that authenticity and not being brave enough to follow your soul. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Didn't I pick the best author
You
to
sure
work
did.
with? Yeah.
You sure did. You sure did. What was the other one? What's the other question?
Is there another question?
Oh, you just picked one. Perfect.
Oh, wait, sorry. I've got the affirmation in one question. Yeah.
Okay,
that's me.
perfect. Go for it, Mom.
That's clever. I should
no,
have done that.
What's your second question?
Okay,
I know.
with my not so
Open your
functioning
heart up a little bit more.
yeah, with my not so functioning glasses, in what ways are you still the same person as you were as a child?
Oh, that's good.
Ooh.
I think everyone who knows me knows the answer to that. I am a total kid. I mean, I'm
I can see that. I can see that.
I'm a responsible child, but I'll tell you openly, I had very interesting eye-opening experiences in my life. When Solve for Happy, my first book, came out, I was chief business officer of Google X, and traveled the world, attended Davos's type, conferences, and everyone's serious and
Very serious.
And then the first time when we published Solve for Happy, the first announcement was at the World Happiness Summit, which was the first actually attempt at the World Happiness Summit, and everyone's so happy and everyone hugs everyone, and it's lovely in every possible way.
Yeah.
But through that journey over the last 6 years now, I ended up getting to know a lot of the really top happiness practitioners in the world, and you get to sit with those people, and they're very, very serious about their practice. They're very serious about their philosophy and understanding of the world, but they're absolute kids.
Yeah.
Absolute kids. I had the joy of meeting His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I am normally in a black T-shirt, but that day I bought a white shirt and a jacket, right? And I tried to I bought a brand new shirt, so they packed it for me. I went to put it on. I think they put in the wrong size. So I ended up with a shirt that was completely open. Okay, had no choice but to, half an hour before the audience with His Holiness, and I'm in Dharamsala. So I decide what do I have that's clean, and I buy I find in my bag a video game T-shirt.
Oh my goodness.
Of one of the early video games that had the heroine of the game was a female, right? So she's there on the T-shirt hugging a companion cube. We call it a pink cube with hearts on it. And that's me going to meet His Holiness, okay?
Yes.
And so I go to meet His Holiness. There are 3 of us or 4 of us. He walks to me and he points at my T-shirt and he says, "You're the funny one. Come sit next to me."
Oh my goodness.
And we laugh our heads off for an hour and a half. He's just a pure, beautiful soul in every possible way. And that gives me the courage to honestly show up in the world and say, you know what? I'm a kid. We're all kids. We're all inside of us, our true nature. So we want honesty and simplicity and flow and fun and play, and we just want to laugh and love everything. We you know, they tell us to go to work and learn 4-letter acronyms and, you know, wear fancy stuff and pretend to be successful and stressed and all of that. In reality, most of us inside just want to connect to others and be kids. So, you know what? I'm a kid in every possible way. I'm, you know, friends who are dear to me know that. My lovely wife knows that. And, you know, at the beginning, when she noticed that I'm a kid, first time, she was like, oh, do I want to marry that man? Like, do I even want to come be with that man? And then eventually she was like,
she came around.
Yeah, he's responsible. A responsible kid is a good kid. Do you want me to do the other one?
Okay, let's see it.
What is a happy memory of you and your caretakers as a child? Happy memory. I vividly remember my dad. My dad was a very busy man, as I said, and he used to take us every weekend to have dinner somewhere, which would be a very long drive, you know, 45 minutes an hour. And you know, we would go somewhere, have lunch, and, you know, and just sit outside and have a good time. And I remember vividly one time where in the restaurant we're in, some kind of a very fancy looking dessert is just served to the table next to us. So he goes like, ooh, and then holds the waiter.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, and says, what is this? I want one of those. And I'm like, Dad, don't do this. Like, why are you doing this? Right? And he looked at me so calmly and he said, Habibi, your freedom, you have the freedom to do everything as long as your freedom doesn't step on the freedom of others. Okay? Feel free as long as you're not depriving anyone else of their freedom to do anything. And you know, it was actually totally okay for me to ask the waiter about this. I didn't deprive anyone of their freedom. And that stuck with me so strongly throughout my life. Not just that I have the freedom, which actually is really a very big deal for a child, but that I have a line that is for my analytical mind very clear in terms of, if you go above this, then you don't have the right to, you know, grab your freedom at the expense of others, which I think is a very interesting difference between West and East in general, but really shaped me in so many ways. I would never forget that memory, you know, and being taught in such a simple and fun way.
It's huge. Oh,
yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And one final question. What word describes this season of life?
My season of life.
One word.
Alice, do you want to go? I know my word for a fact.
Oh, I don't know my word. 1 second,
Okay.
you go.
Okay.
I
This is my season of flow. I've spent a very long time in my life being a very masculine executive who was very disciplined and planned and analytical. And I started to enable my feminine side more and more over the years, since 2018 to be very specific. And believe it or not, the gateway for me to enable my feminine was flow. And so this season is entirely the season of flow.
Ooh.
Well, there you go. I think this is my season of expansion, actually. There's been a lot of like work that's gone into this for 10 years for me in different ways, and life experience, as well as, you know, studying the different modalities. And now I kind of feel really ready as to who I am to like try and give that to other people, so they don't have to go to many different places to look for stuff, and bring it all to one and expand, you know, as much as I can into the world to help like take our message to the world and have different experiences and see where the flow goes.
Yeah,
Flow?
dangerous.
Flow and expansion. This is great. Thank you.
Flow and expansion is a lovely title for another book.
Well, Brave Table fam, you heard it first here. Coming soon. We'll have to bring you both back.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for playing.
Thank
This
you.
is amazing.
So wonderful. Thank you.
Until next time on the Brave Table.